Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to sift through a pile of information and pull out what really matters for you, the listener, who wants to get up to speed quickly, without getting buried in details.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into a really interesting mix of topics. We've got leadership, followership, those tricky interpersonal skills, generational differences at work, ethical thinking, and how organizations like the Army Civilian Corps and others actually function.
Yeah, it's quite a web. Our goal really is to pull out those key insights, those nuggets that give you a solid grasp of how these things connect.
hmm We've got articles, research, notes, a good range of material provided. We've gone through it to find the core ideas, the aha moments, maybe even a few things that might surprise you.
Great, so you'll walk away feeling well informed.
Okay.
Let's dive in. First topic, the vital role of followers. Maybe a bit unexpected.
It can seem that way, yeah. We tend to put all the focus on the leaders, don't we? But the sources we looked at really hammer home that strong organizations need good followers. Actually, more good followers than leaders.
That's a really interesting point. Like, a team needs more than just a captain.
Precisely. The leader sets the vision, sure, but it's the followers who make it happen. They're the implementer.
Implementers. So they're the ones who understand the goals, accept them, and then actively work towards them.
Exactly. They support the leader's vision. It's not passive at all. They're driving the day-to-day work, moving things forward.
So not just taking orders, but actively contributing, building the future, essentially.
That's what the sources emphasize. Followers build the organizations of tomorrow, they provide the momentum, and understanding this dynamic is key for everyone, really, no matter your role.
Okay, that makes sense. So followers are crucial. Now, building on that, one source brings up interpersonal communication, specifically how gender can play a role in follower interactions. What's that about?
Yeah, this was fascinating. It's Linda Ford's observation about how men and women might sometimes, approach things differently, specifically using questions versus statements.
How so?
Well, she notes that sometimes women might frame an idea as a question, whereas men might state it more directly, maybe even if they aren't entirely sure.
Okay, I can see how that could lead to crossed wires.
Definitely. As Ford points out, phrasing something as a question might accidentally be seen as uncertainty, right? While a direct statement could sometimes come off as, well, maybe arrogant or overly assertive, even if that wasn't the intent.
So misinterpretations are possible just based on style.
They are. And for followers interacting with colleagues, especially across gender lines, being aware of this is important.
So it's about adapting your communication to ensure professionalism and, get the mission done smoothly.
Absolutely. Being conscious of how your message might land, depending on who you're talking to, it enhances clarity and teamwork.
Right. And it's not just gender, is it? The sources also mention the mix of generations in the workplace. Gen X, boomers, millennials, even traditionalists. Why is understanding them important for followers?
Well, it adds another layer to that interpersonal communication piece. Each generation has been shaped by different major events, different technologies, different cultural trends,
Right.
and that influences their values, their work styles, how they prefer to communicate. Someone used to email might have a different style than someone who grew up with instant messaging or face-to-face as the norm.
So a follower might need to adjust their approach based on generational background too.
It can definitely help build rapport and avoid misunderstandings, but beyond these specific dynamics, the sources also stress some fundamental aspects of professionalism for followers.
Okay, like the basics. What are those?
Yeah, the non-negotiables,
Yeah.
things like dependability,
Mm.
doing what you say you'll do, competence, having the skills, honesty, obviously, self-discipline, self-management.
Taking initiative, staying organized.
Exactly. And then things like self-presentation, using language respectfully, appropriate dress, it all builds credibility and trust. Strong working relationships depend on this stuff.
Okay, so effective followership involves active contribution, adaptive communication, and solid professionalism. Got it. Now, let's flip to the leader's role in communication. The sources say mastering oral communication is a real hallmark of leadership.
It absolutely is. It's more than just talking well. It's a core skill for articulating a vision, setting expectations, inspiring people, basically painting that clear picture for followers.
And the sources use some big examples, right? Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, powerful examples. Leaders whose ability to communicate their vision clearly and passionately had a massive impact. It really moved people.
So what are the key ingredients for that kind of effective oral communication? What makes it work?
The materials point to a few core things. Logic, making sure your points are reasoned. Organizations structuring it clearly so people can follow. directness, getting to the point,
Mm.
and precision, using clear, unambiguous language.
But just knowing those things isn't enough, right? It takes practice.
Oh, absolutely. You don't become a great speaker just by reading about it. The sources, stress, practice, rehearsal, actual performance. Every time you communicate is a chance to get better.
Are there universal qualities that effective speakers share? Things that always resonate?
Yes, definitely. Integrity is huge. Being ethical, trustworthy, character showing conviction, authenticity, deep knowledge of your subject, speaking with authority, and of course, the actual skill of delivering the message effectively.
I remember some powerful quotes in there about character. Emerson, Aristotle.
Yes, Emerson's "what you are" thunders so that I cannot hear what you say to the contrary. That really says it all, doesn't it? Your actions have to match your words. And Aristotle saying the speaker's character is the most potent persuasion tool. It highlights that fundamental link between integrity and influence.
And knowing your stuff is non-negotiable too.
Completely. Leaders have a responsibility to be well-informed. And crucially, to understand their audience. What do they need to hear? How will they connect with this? Like Whitehead said, just being well-informed isn't enough. You can be a bore. You need to connect.
Okay, beyond character and knowledge, what about the actual delivery? The structure?
Structure is key. A clear intro, body, conclusion. That introduction is critical. It has to grab attention, build goodwill, and clearly state what you're talking about.
How do you grab that attention effectively?
The sources suggest things like a striking story, a surprising fact, maybe a provocative question. The example used was Arthur Taylor, starting with the Battle of New Orleans, fought after the treaty was signed. That definitely makes you lean in, right?
Yeah, that's a great hook. And once you're into the speech, the physical delivery matters too. Voice, body language.
Immensely. Speaking clearly, audibly, fluently, using forceful, impactful language. Using gestures, body language, animation, all keeps people engaged. And any visual aids need to support the message, not distract. Clear, concise, relevant.
And being ready for questions is part of it too.
Oh, absolutely. Good speakers anticipate questions, maybe even address them proactively, and they have extra info ready for the Q&A. Shows respect for the audience, shows you're prepared.
The sources even had a checklist for public speaking, didn't they? Kind of a reminder of all the pieces.
They did, yeah. It covers everything: organization, content depth, support, delivery, appearance, sincerity, eye contact, voice, visuals, handling questions, staying on time. A really useful tool for anyone wanting to improve.
Okay, all this on communication is great. But what about the more hands-on guidance? Supervision comes up as a key people skill. How does that connect?
It connects directly. Supervision is leadership in action, often at a closer level. And it heavily relies on those interpersonal skills we've discussed. It covers a whole range of management basics.
Like what specifically?
Well, decision-making, problem-solving, planning, delegating effectively, running meetings that aren't a waste of time, organizing teams, designing roles, hiring, training, managing performance, making sure policies are followed. It's a lot.
Delegation seems to get special emphasis. Why is that so critical?
Because good delegation isn't just about offloading tasks. It's a really powerful way to develop your people, build their confidence, and free up your own time for more strategic work. Done right, it's a win-win.
Is there a specific process for delegating well?
Yes, the sources lay out a pretty practical 4-step model. 1, explain the task and why you chose that person. 2, set clear objectives, responsibility, authority level, deadlines. 3, give them the resources, support, maybe a coach, and empower them. 4, set up check-ins and hold them accountable for the outcome.
And coaching fits into that.
Yeah, coaching is really useful, especially if the task is new or a stretch for the follower. Providing that guidance helps them succeed and builds their capability, which increases the leader's overall capacity too.
Okay, beyond day-to-day supervision, the materials also talk about counseling, coaching, and mentoring for follower development. How do those differ?
They're all related, all about growth, but with slightly different angles. Counseling often focuses on reviewing past performance, addressing specific issues, maybe setting future goals. Coaching is more about ongoing feedback to improve current performance, building specific skills. Mentoring is usually broader, longer term, focused on overall career development.
Let's dig into counseling first. What makes it effective for development?
The key is that it's follower-centered. It's a conversation, not a lecture. The goal is to recognize performance, good and bad, and collaboratively develop plans to reach goals, whether they're individual, training-related, or organizational. Army Field Manual 622 really stresses that active follower participation.
How should a leader prepare for a counseling session?
Preparation is vital. First, Know why you're counseling routine review, specific event, growth discussion. Then pick a good time, private place, give advance notice with an agenda, plan the discussion, make sure it is a discussion, and then document it and follow up.
And during the session itself, what's the leader's main job?
To facilitate. Help the followers see their strengths and weaknesses clearly, objectively, then work together to create an action plan. And critically, offer support to make that plan happen.
The Army has different types of counseling, right?
Yep. Event counseling for specific incidents. Performance counseling, tied to evaluations, reviewing objectives and standards. And professional growth counseling, which is future-focused career goals, development plans, that pathway to success.
And different ways to approach the conversation itself.
3 main ways. Non-directive is often preferred. Leader asks open questions, listens, helps the follower find their own solutions, builds ownership. Directive is more leader-led, giving specific advice good for simple problems or quick corrections, and combined uses techniques from both, adapting to the situation.
Okay, now shifting to coaching, how is that different from counseling?
Coaching, like we touched on, is generally more focused on providing that ongoing motivational feedback to improve current performance. It's about maximizing strengths, minimizing weaknesses right now. Lessier and Achua offer some great guidelines.
What are some of their key tips for effective coaching?
Build a supportive relationship first. Give praise often. Avoid blame. Focus on specific behaviors, not the person. Encourage self-assessment. Give specific feedback. Model good behavior. Offer training. Give timely feedback, but be flexible. No unnecessary criticism. Be specific, descriptive, non-judgmental.
That sounds like a really positive, constructive approach. Okay, let's move to another big topic. Generational diversity. Why is this so important now?
Because the workplace is more generationally diverse than ever. You've potentially got traditionalists, boomers, Gen X, millennials, all working together. Each group was shaped by different world events, technology shifts, cultural norms,
Right.
and that shapes their values, their communication preferences, their expectations about work. Understanding this is key for leaders and followers too, really. It can be a huge asset, but also a challenge if not managed well.
Can you give us a quick rundown of those generations, the birth years, and maybe a key trait or two?
Sure. Traditionalists, born roughly 1920, 1945, so they're 80 plus now. Shaped by the Depression, WWII, often value dedication, duty, loyalty. Baby boomers, 46, 64, now 60s and 70s. Vietnam Civil Rights era, tend to be optimistic, team-oriented, want involvement. Gen X, 60, 80, so 40s to 60s, grew up with computers, MTV, Watergate, value diversity, balance, self-reliance, tech-savvy. Millennials, 80, 2000, now 20s to 40s. Internet generation, confidence, civic-minded, achievement-focused, high-tech comfort, expect fast communication.
And the workforce percentages show that boomers and Gen X are the biggest groups right now.
According to the source data, yeah, traditionalists are fewer, around 5%. Boomers and Gen X were both over 40%, with millennials around 10% at that time. So you have this significant mix.
How do these differences actually show up in the workplace? What should leaders watch out for?
Oh, lots of ways. Communication styles, obviously. Expectations about work hours, what motivates people, pay, rewards, recognition, even things like dress codes. A millennial raised on instant messaging might expect very different response times than a boomer used to memos. The sources even mention the DoD blocking social media back in '07 and the gap that created.
Sounds like it could create some HR headaches.
It can. What motivates one group might not work for another. Younger folks might prioritize growth opportunities and balance, while older generations might value security more.
The sources suggest cross-generational teams as a potential solution.
Yes, that can be really effective. Mix people up. It forces dialogue, sharing perspectives. You might find common ground on something like dress codes, for example, through that kind of open discussion.
So the leader's job is really to learn about these differences and foster an environment where everyone's strengths are valued.
Exactly. Educate yourself. Educate the team. Build understanding. That's how you create productive intergenerational teams.
It's not just about understanding the groups, though. Leaders need to understand how followers see them, right? The follower perspective.
Absolutely critical. Leaders need to remember followers have their own viewpoint, their own experience. Ignoring that, especially with new hires, can lead to them feeling lost or unsupported and leaving quickly.
And followers often see things the leader misses, blind spots.
Often, yes. And they tend to respect leaders who aren't afraid to admit mistakes. John Maxwell's quote is great here: "Don't waste energy trying to look perfect. Authenticity matters." Humility.
And being visible, connecting with people, not just staying in the office.
Huge. Followers want leaders who engage, who show interest. Lincoln, Colin Powell leaders who got out there with their people. That builds trust, loyalty.
Research actually shows a link between daily events and follower emotions and motivation.
Yes, Bill and Kramer's work. Followers are constantly making sense of what happens at work. Positive things, collaboration, innovation being valued, fair evaluation, boost creativity and drive. Negative stuff kills it.
That anecdote about the private in basic training reframing the drill sergeant's intensity was powerful.
Yeah, fantastic example. Seeing the tough treatment not as punishment, but as proof the sergeants cared and believed in him. It's about perspective. Like Maxwell says, see your followers as tens, see their potential.
And followers are actively looking for mentors too.
Definitely. They look for leaders they admire, people they can learn from, who can offer guidance. It might be formal or just observing and emulating. Good mentors make a big difference to satisfaction and career growth.
Understanding that follower perspective seems crucial. Okay, now managing change. How should leaders approach that, keeping the follower's view in mind?
That's key because change can be unsettling. Followers want to understand the why. They want input if possible. And they can be really resistant if a change feels imposed based just on a new leader's past experience somewhere else without considering this place.
Because every organization is unique, right? It has its own history, its own way of doing things.
Exactly. Just importing changes without understanding the current context is risky. You can alienate good people. Len Foch's quote about leaders being the last to see problems because of ego really applies here. Don't assume your way is automatically better.
So collaboration is key, involving followers in figuring out solutions.
Absolutely. When leaders work with followers to brainstorm, to problem solve, they get much better buy-in. We need to ditch that old idea that if followers knew how to lead, the leader wouldn't be needed. Followers have valuable insights.
Okay, let's talk values. The sources stress the importance of both personal and organizational core values. How do they form a foundation?
Values are like the compass. For individuals and organizations, they guide behavior, decisions. The Tiger Woods film Mickelson example shows how early influences shape personal values like service, respect.
And those personal values impact how people operate at work.
They do. And organizational values are just as critical. They need to be clear, woven into the vision, the mission, the goals, and crucially, leaders have to live those values. Walk the talk. Followers are watching.
If leaders don't embody the values, why would anyone else? It just undermines trust.
Exactly. Values shape the culture, the reputation, success. True effectiveness isn't just hitting targets. It's doing it while keeping the team strong, morale high.
And aligning personal values with something like the Army values isn't automatic. It takes work.
Right. People take an oath, but their own core values are still there. Alignment needs conscious effort, training, coaching, counseling, leaders, setting the example consistently. It's about building that shared commitment.
To be effective in all this requires ongoing growth. The idea of personal mastery comes up. What does that mean practically?
Personal mastery is about continuously getting better at producing the results you want. Think of learning basketball at first. You consciously focus on dribbling. With practice, it becomes automatic, subconscious almost. That frees you up to think about strategy, the team.
And there are stages to this mastery: novice, competent, expert.
Yes. Novices focus on learning the basics, the rules. Individual tasks feel complex. Competent people start understanding cause and effect, feel responsible, see beyond the immediate task. Experts rely on experience, intuition, see the big picture, the end state. Expert teams achieve that synergy more than the sum of their parts.
And this applies to teamwork too. Building team skills requires mastery.
Definitely. Basic understanding gives basic results. Expert team performance requires mastering the principles of teamwork through experience, not just knowing the theory.
Speaking of teams, why are they so essential now?
Complexity. The world is complex. Teams help organizations tackle that, bring diverse skills together, decentralize decisions, makes organizations more agile, more innovative.
But just throwing people together doesn't make a team. What are the core principles?
Right. The sources list several. Building the right culture, having a shared vision, clear communication, defined roles, motivation, and evaluation. You need to master these to get beyond novice-level teamwork.
Let's unpack a few. Team culture.
That's the foundation, that the shared values, beliefs, norms. You have to understand the existing culture first. Key elements of a good one include self-management, customer focus, open information sharing.
And the shared vision gives direction.
Exactly. It's the why. A common purpose that guides action, especially through challenges. It's built through communication, commitment, enthusiasm. Experts see vision not as a fixed thing, but an ongoing partnership.
Communication is the glue then.
Absolutely. The constant exchange of information, ideas, feedback, it needs trust, respect, support, clarity, active listening, and dealing with miscommunication, constructively focus on the issue, not the person.
And clear roles, making sure everyone knows their part.
Crucial. And it's best to align roles with people's strengths. Experts don't just know their own role, they understand how it connects with others and help the whole team develop. Belbin's research on balanced team roles is relevant here.
So building great teams takes deliberate effort, planning, mastery, and constant evaluation.
Exactly. It starts and ends with evaluation, assessing the culture, the performance, and iterating.
Okay, another critical element. Emotional intelligence, or EQ. Why is that getting so much attention?
Because in today's fast-changing, unpredictable world, traditional smarts aren't enough. EQ, motivating yourself, controlling impulses, managing moods, empathizing, hoping as Goleman defines it, is crucial for navigating change and leading effectively.
And the Army environment is seen as a good place to develop these skills.
Yes, because the diversity and pressures provide opportunities. When people see the link between EQ and success, they're motivated to work on it. Leaders see their own success tied to their team's EQ.
How is EQ different from IQ?
EQ is about understanding and managing emotions, yours and others. It's learned largely through experience. IQ is more about cognitive abilities, problem-solving, abstract thinking. IQ might get you the job, but EQ often determines how well you do in it. Teamwork, handling pressure, communication.
So it's about being people smart, not just book smart.
Basically, yes. Research by Goleman, Cooper, Sawoff, Kelly all points to EQ competencies being key for top performers. It requires self-awareness, consciously monitoring yourself.
Is EQ something we only focus on when there's a problem?
Often, yeah. But the sources argue for proactively developing it early. It prevents problems, builds stronger relationships, better teamwork, more resilience.
And managing your own emotions is foundational. Self-awareness, self-control.
Absolutely. Understanding your triggers, managing your reactions. Leaders who stay calm under pressure make better decisions, inspire more confidence.
There was an example of a program for this. Texas A&M.
Yes, the Javelina Emotional Intelligence Program. It helps people practice key EQ skills: assertiveness, empathy, decision-making, stress management, things vital for success.
So ultimately, developing EQ boosts leadership and career potential.
Definitely. Better communication, relationships, conflict resolution, resilience, motivation. It makes you a more effective leader and enhances your career prospects significantly.
Okay, let's shift to a tough but important topic. Barriers faced by women and minorities in leadership. The glass ceiling.
Yes, it's that persistent invisible barrier. Qualified women and minorities still struggle to reach middle and upper management, even with the right skills and experience. Sources suggest the government, for one, isn't fully utilizing their potential.
And these aren't usually explicit rules, but more subtle, systemic things.
Exactly. Even when they get leadership roles, they're often concentrated in certain sectors or in staff roles with limited paths to the core decision-making line positions. Suggests those invisible obstacles are still there.
The sources mention different ways to think about this paradigm.
Yeah, Debra Stewart identified three: political women needing political savvy, psychological and outdated idea that women lacked inherent drive, and sociological, which the sources focus on arguing the barriers are in the organizational structure: position, representation, power, opportunity.
Tell me more about the sociological view, Cantor's work.
Right. Cantor argued behavior is linked to your structural position. Your position affects access to info, training, mentors, things you need to show leadership. Opportunity matters. Real advancement prospects boost ambition. Low opportunity stifles it. And power, the ability to get resources. Low power can lead to low morale, maybe authoritarian styles. High power fosters morale, delegation. There's also a note that leaders of color might face unique challenges with follower responses to their authority due to bias.
And stereotypes play a role in decisions. Promotion, development.
Absolutely. Unconscious bias based on gender or race can creep into personnel decisions, especially in ambiguous situations. It leads to discrimination.
Training and mentoring seem key to breaking these barriers.
Very much so. Training levels the playing field skill-wise. Mentors provide crucial guidance, share knowledge, help navigate the system. People with mentors report higher satisfaction and faster advancement.
What about arguments that it's about women's choices or less time in the pipeline?
The sources acknowledge those factors, but say they don't fully explain the gap at the top. Networking and the representative theory are also factors. Power holders tend to support people like them. disadvantaging those less represented. Role models and challenging assignments are vital antidotes.
And specific factors in the federal government.
Yes, Daly and Naff identified things like human capital, job choices, family factors, networking, development opportunities, experience, mobility, time and service, children, all influencing advancement there. It's complex.
A complex issue indeed. Okay, let's switch to the Army's framework. The Army Leadership Requirements Model, ALRM.
Right, the be, know, do model. It's foundational for the Army. What a leader must be, attributes like character, presence, intellect, and what a leader must do, competencies like leads, develops, achieves. It's evolved over 200 plus years, aimed at creating positive climates and results.
And it's increasingly applied to civilians, too.
Absolutely. With the changing nature of warfare, reliance on civilians, military to civilian conversions, there's the same emphasis now on developing strategic civilian leaders alongside military ones. Both need to be critical thinkers, team builders.
And technology like distributed learning helps.
Yes, DL is seen as a leadership multiplier. It expands reach, overcomes time and distance constraints for training.
Another interesting concept was self-synchronization in network-centric warfare.
Yeah.
How does that change things?
It's a huge shift. Technology allows information sharing across levels like never before. Self-synchronization means people can access the same situational awareness as commanders and act on decisions more quickly without waiting for hierarchical directives. It enables faster, more precise action.
So shared understanding drives distributed action.
Exactly. Network-centric warfare, NCW, links everyone sharing info, collaborating, building that shared awareness, enabling self-synchronization. Operations in Iraq and Afghanistan showed this in action. Commanders and soldiers collaborating in near real time.
Leaders need to be part of that network then.
Definitely. They need to use the network to share, collaborate, build that common picture. It requires analyzing resources, fixing disconnects. The RAND study on striker brigades showed how advanced comms boosted situational awareness.
But technology isn't everything, right? Trust still matters.
Absolutely fundamental. Technology enables, but trust, built on integrity, is what motivates people, builds commitment, makes the whole thing effective.
That leads nicely into ethical reasoning. Why is that so crucial?
Because organizations constantly face complex ethical dilemmas. Having a framework for reasoning through them is vital. The Johnson & Johnson Tylenol response is a classic example. Their credo-guided and ethical, albeit costly, decision that ultimately saved their reputation.
The sources mention some moral theories: natural law, social contract, duty-based.
Yeah, quick overview. Natural law, Aquinas, morality based on human nature's function, though defining natural is tricky. Social contract, Hobbes, morality from mutual agreement on rules, but struggles with changing unjust rules. Duty-based, Kant, morality comes from fulfilling duties based on reason, goodwill. Emphasizes moral character, widely accepted.
How does this apply to leaders?
Leaders set the ethical tone. They need to constantly challenge themselves, see ethics not as suggestions, but as firm principles guiding their actions.
Kohlberg's stages of moral development came up too. How did that fit?
Kohlberg's stages show how moral reasoning tends to develop, from pre-conventional, avoiding punishment, self-interest, to conventional social norms, interpersonal accord, to post-conventional social contracts, universal principles. Understanding this helps leaders foster higher-level ethical thinking.
So higher moral development leads to better ethical choices.
Generally, yes. It helps people resist self-interest, consider broader principles, and make more ethical decisions.
Okay, let's talk leadership styles. Transformational versus transactional. What's the difference?
Transactional is basically an exchange. Meet expectations, get rewards. Transformational goes further, inspiring followers to exceed expectations, to buy into a bigger vision, to reach their potential. Howell and Avolio's research found transformational is especially good in uncertain times.
What are the key elements of transformational leadership?
Bass identified 4 I's. Idealized influence, charisma leader is admired, trusted, ethical. Inspirational motivation leader paints a compelling vision, inspires confidence. Intellectual stimulation challenges assumptions, encourages innovation, critical thinking. Colonel Wong encouraging proactive thought in Iraq is a good example. An individualized consideration leader coaches, mentors, cares about individual needs.
And when used well, this style really lifts performance.
Yes. It elevates followers' achievements, boosts commitment and creativity, pushes results beyond the expected.
Finally, building high-performing organizations. What are the keys to that?
It starts with a culture committed to always improving. Evaluation is critical, knowing where you stand. Tuttle's matrix highlights balancing task performance and relationship skills need both.
and Tuttle's inverted pyramid.
Right. Leaders are at the bottom, supporting the people doing the core work. A servant leadership idea.
And insights from interviews. Linda Pearson Bobstone.
Pearson stressed honest but kind communication, team accountability, reframing mindsets. Stone talked servant leadership, his ABC: authenticity, buoyancy, control, communicating vision, energizing, mentoring. He praised military leadership development but saw room for civil service improvement.
Some sources also frame leadership as a relationship. Rost's ideas.
Yes, Rost sees leadership as multidirectional influence, non-coercive, leaders and collaborators doing leadership together, aiming for real, purposeful change based on mutual goals. It's less top-down than, say, the FN 622 definition.
Does this fit with complex adaptive systems thinking?
It does. Viewing organizations like the military as CAS interconnected, adaptive, self-organizing supports that relational view. CAS leaders foster resourcefulness, share power, involve others. Colonel Wong's study on less reliance on command fiat fits here. Too much authoritarianism can be negative. Colditz says relationships come before status. It suggests moving from be, know, do towards be, learn, collaborate.
And the idea of civilians as micro-strategists.
That challenges the idea strategy is only for generals. It says people at many levels, including civilians, do strategy-like work, building future capabilities, solving complex problems just on a smaller scale. Microstrategies, De Bono called them, adapting to specific situations.
Like developing critical thinking and training versus just tactical drills.
Exactly. It's about building future capability. The Army Civilian Education System, CES development, was a catalyst for this thinking. It requires higher cognitive skills, dealing with ambiguity, which needs to be developed progressively, maybe through problem-based learning, not just expecting it to appear at senior levels.
Okay, last topic. Those invisible barriers to organizational effectiveness.
Right, the subtle stuff that blocks progress. Things like malicious compliance, following the letter but not the spirit, mirroring, promoting people like yourself, self-interest, overriding goals, SDIG, slapping down the idea generator, killing feedback, malicious mischief, gossip, disruption, lack of diverse thought, hidden agendas, management by mood, fear of confrontation, feigning agreement.
Nasty stuff and hard to see sometimes.
Exactly. Visible barriers are obvious. These require honest willingness to look, to question. Motivation is complex. Solutions need creativity. Fixing these needs ongoing communication, introspection, embracing change, leaders modeling the right behavior, and transparent long-term solutions.
Wow, that was a truly comprehensive deep dive. We've covered followership, communication, generations, ethics, leadership styles, teams, EQ, equity barriers, the ALRM, self-synchronization, microstrategists, and those invisible barriers.
A lot of interconnected ground, definitely. Hopefully listeners feel much better informed now with some practical takeaways.
Absolutely. So, a final thought for everyone listening. Think about those invisible barriers. Could they be operating in your workplace, maybe even subtly? How might recognizing them help improve effectiveness? And what's one small step you could take, perhaps tomorrow, to encourage more open communication or honest reflection around you?
Yeah, something to really chew on. We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas and see how they apply in your own world.